Hello, I'm Sydni Loudermilk, producer of The Academics, and welcome to this semester's first episode. Joining me today are our regular panelists, Professor Heather Page Preston and Dr. Dave Spiceland. This week's topic deals with a sensitive but important topic that I personally have been experiencing as a student here at Appalachian, and that is anxiety and depression. Our correspondent, Faith Hatton, has more about psychological services for Appalachian students.
Mental illness can be a very difficult topic to discuss. However, our reluctance to talk about it is not going to make the problem go away. It is estimated that 26% of Americans ages 18 or older live with a diagnosable mental health disorder. Luckily for the students of Appalachian State, there are resources available to you. Counseling and psychological services can be found on the first floor of the Miles Annis building right underneath the Student Health Center. With a warm, welcoming environment and 10 clinical staff members available, the Counseling Center offers an array of services including short-term individual counseling, group counseling, preventative and outreach programs, initial consultations, and so much more. The Counseling Center is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. An initial consultation is the first step to short-term health. Online resources, including first steps and preventative programs, are also available at www.counseling.appstate.edu. Half of all serious psychiatric diseases affecting adults, including anxiety disorders and depression, can become present as early as 14 years of age. Compared to older adults, students aged 18 to 24 show the lowest rate of help seeking. The counseling professionals at the Counseling Center are here to help. If you or anyone you know is having trouble with mental illness, please let them. Reporting for The Academics, I'm Faith Hatton.
Thank you, Faith. So why is depression so prevalent in the Appalachian area, especially on campus with students, do you think?
Oh, well, that's a two-parter. So depression in Appalachia can be similar to what's on campus, but it's also a very separate issue. So the Appalachian Regional Commission, which is a federal-state partnership to look at the quality of life in Appalachia and to increase the quality of life, has noted a number of reasons why depression is so high. In fact, of the states that are part of the Appalachian Range, there is, it wouldn't be a sweet spot, it would be a dark spot right where Kentucky and Ohio and West Virginia meet, where 30% or more of the population has been diagnosed with depression. Now, this is a serious issue. So the reasons that they attribute to this is poverty, financial stress, and we all know that not having a lot of money is very stressful, not being able to pay your bills, not being able to get a job to pay your bills. So lack of jobs is one, as coal has moved out of the region. People have not had training or access to training to repurpose themselves for other jobs. And those jobs haven't existed. No one's developing them. So the commission helps to do that as well. Physical ailments, when you work with your hands, you work with your back, you work with your body, you're going to hurt at some point. You're going to age quicker. And so no access to health care, a failing body, all of that is going to make you depressed at some point. We also have society's belief about happiness. We're supposed to be happy all the time. You're not allowed to be sad. Everything tells us what's wrong with you if you're sad.
That one gets me every
Yes, well, it's just a range of emotions. There's nothing wrong with being sad. In fact, it's very natural.
and healthy.
And there's a difference between being sad and being depressed. And we can get into that in a second. But, you know, people who are seeking to be happy all the time often self-medicate. So if you look at the statistics for opioid abuse, but any drug abuse, not surprisingly, it matches up with the states in the Appalachian chain. It starts in New Hampshire, actually, and runs all the way down to Alabama, the states that have the biggest problems with drugs because people are self-medicating.
It's crazy because at my job, I hear all the time, and we have this conversation all the time, that it's just this known fact that most everybody there is struggling with it. I was talking to one of my co-workers yesterday, and I asked him what makes him so depressed. And it's crazy because it relates back to his major and his classes. He majored in sustainability when he was attending school here. And he was saying, as you look at all the problems that are going on in the world, it's hard to have hope. And so when I think about them all the time, I end up getting depressed. And then I'm probably one of very few people at my job who doesn't smoke, drink, or use drugs. And to cope.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the question I use to introduce people is, or to introduce myself with people and ask, I don't know, an icebreaker, is do you use hard drugs? that is actually what I use. And half the time, more than half the time, they say yes. Very
Wow.
I'm going to disagree here a little bit. I think it's a problem, depression, and it depends how you define depression. But I think it's true anywhere. I'm not sure if it's a regional thing so much as a product of our time. You know, you see people walking around with this cell phone and they have to get the news. There's times to turn that thing off, and there's times that you can be more introspective, et cetera, and try to avoid, you know, all the things that could very well cause this. I mean, you're talking about poverty. I'm not rich, and I'm sorry, but I haven't, as a teacher here, I don't get paid a lot. And so I've had to cope with, you know, some of the same kind of issues in terms of keeping my family afloat, you know, through the years. Yeah. But, you know, going back to how you define depression, there's clinical depression, but then there's also, you know, which is a medical thing, but there's also the downs, the blues. I don't like winter. I hate winter. I'll go on the record. I hate winter. and there's the seasonal issue.
Disorder.
Yeah, and there's also when it gets raining here and snowy and whatever. I mean, I can go stark raving mad. Versus if it's the summertime and things are a little bit better as far as the weather. But that's me. I don't know if anybody else deals with those kind of issues.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and it makes me think of, we have a lot in common. I always tell people I'm afraid of heights, and they look at me and say, you moved to the mountains. So the same thing, you don't like winter and you moved to the mountains?
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think I was saying, and if I stated it this way, I apologize, that Appalachia has the most depression. It is one of the highest areas in the country for depression as a region. But you're right, it exists everywhere, and it can affect anybody.
Well, and when you mention everybody, I've thought about historical figures that dealt with depression. There's the movie Darkest Hour, which, by the way, I would love to see it in Boone if they would bring it to Boone, but that's another issue.
Good plug.
I'm going to have to drive somewhere else to see the movie.
Field trip.
But Winston Churchill was, I was going to say he was a depressing person, and that's not, he was a very inspiring person, but he suffered from depression. I've been to the place in London where he had his secret headquarters.
The Cabinet War
Have
Rooms
you been
is
there?
fascinating.
Oh,
my
great.
gosh, it's incredible.
But this guy had his issues with depression. A very witty guy, but we would be surprised at some of the famous people that we would think would not have this issue. Mike Wallace, the late Mike Wallace, CBS News. There's a thing that says, you know you're going to have a bad day when a 60 Minutes crew comes to your office. And he was a bulldog, but he suffered from depression and even attempted suicide at one point. And there's also clinical depression. I had mentioned that before. I've been watching the PBS thing on Victoria, and when Victoria had one of her many children, what she had, 9, something like that?
There were a lot.
There were a lot. And the episode that was from last week, she talked about down feelings or low feelings, and that was something that I don't think they understood all of the issues there.
Postpartum depression.
Yeah, that's what we call it today, and it's a real thing. It really is.
Where students are concerned too, you know, where's the line between talking to them about depression and helping them learn it, and then making it too, I don't know.
Personal to.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You know, I don't think vulnerability in a classroom is a bad thing. I think you learn a lot more if you're willing to open up to people. One, you have to self-reflect and say, okay, what are the things that I've dealt with? And then you're able to share that experience. We're there to be role models to an extent. But we're experts, and if you're not expert on yourself, you shouldn't be in front of a classroom. You know, so just taking a step back and saying we're all human beings on this planet, we share similar experiences, helps. just saying that helps.
It opens the door.
It does open the door, absolutely.
And I've had professors do that all the time.
And you know,
which is nice.
I can't relate completely to the things that are triggering depression in college-age students, and there are tons of studies out. But I use Facebook, I use my phone, I use it when I'm bored or don't want to appear as, you know, if I want to chat with people I don't know, right?
Right.
So avoidance behavior. We all do that, and I tease my students about that, but I'm also acknowledging it myself. And I do notice a difference when I've been scrolling Facebook and the need to pick it up and do it again and again and again. And
Right.
I'm not happier each time I do it. I feel like I'm missing something, you know, the fear of missing out, a little FOMO there, but
That's a big one.
But it's also the information that you get. And the world has never been a happy-go-lucky place. There've been dark moments at every point in the world's existence. I think we do a poor job these days facing up to that and actively participating in society. And technology allows us to do that now in a way that it's never done before. Yeah.
Even with technology, though, as a student coming from this perspective, I also know that the weight of doing all of this work and feeling the pressures of the future are so much that I want to shut down, and having work on top of schoolwork, like actual physical, like I need to support myself, money work, and trying to figure out how to make it on your own, because this is the weird in-between part of your life where you're not just a kid anymore, but you're not fully an adult. God, far from it, actually, but you're trying to figure it out on your own for the first time, and sometimes parents aren't there to help, and you have to figure it out on your own. And so that's also scary, and making friends and learning how to put yourself out there. And I know that technology is a big thing because it takes us away from having to learn these interactions with each other that are personal, that you have to break through the awkward barrier of, oh God, I have to ask a girl out or I have to ask a guy out. But there's so many factors that go in. I can't even say that it's just social media anymore, but I do use it to distract myself when I feel down.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned this, and Dave, I don't know if you've seen any of this, but there have been studies done, and the latest one was done by a university in Japan that studied 25,000 workers and discovered that there's a threshold of too much time and what that does to us psychologically, and the threshold is 5 hours. Anyone who's on a computer 5 or more hours a day suffers from anxiety and depression much more than people who max out around 4 hours a day.
Well, there's something too about the screen. No names mentioned, but if you're dealing with even a cell phone, I'm trying to think what the wording is, but I was hearing some research that's actually, people who look at their cell phone to go to sleep, that's not too smart, because those are actually keeping you awake.
It stimulates your brain, the lights in the phone.
My sister told me that, actually.
Yes.
She told me whatever you do when you're sitting in your bed at night, that is what your brain is going to connect to what you end up thinking that's what it's for. So if you do work in when you're laying in bed or sitting in bed, and if you do things that are active, your brain is going to think that's what you're supposed to do at that time. So it's harder to fall asleep if you look at your phone. But if you just sit there, it's easier to fall asleep.
Well, going back to the students, I like to think I'm a sensitive guy, and I think all of us teachers, some of us put on a happier face than others, but we want to be there for the student. But when a student comes to me and says, I got all this stuff, it's not a matter of taking the weight off. There's that prayer that says, Lord, don't give me, I'm trying to think how it's worded, give me the stronger back, basically, not a lighter load. And this is the time you learn to do that. I had a student one time tell me, well, I can't wait until I get out, graduate, because it'll be easier. I said, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
You're going to have car payments, you're going to have a lot of things that they've got right now anyway. But you need to learn to cope with those kinds of issues. And I think we can be helpful, but a lot of times, I don't think we do a good job if we don't let the students see what reality is, because I think that they are adults now. Sometimes I see the two sides. I go, well, I'm an adult, but then when you give them adult responsibilities,
we freak out.
Okay, so story time. When I do the study abroad to England, You know, I'm kind of giving away my hand, but I take students. They bond on the plane trip over. We get there, we all take a nap, we get out and you know, explore. The first day we do a tour, it's planned. Then at lunchtime, I say, okay, you've been familiar, or you've gotten familiar with your surroundings. You know how to use the underground system, the tube. You know where the ATM machines are so that you can get more cash if you need it. I said, I'm going to go have lunch at my favorite pub. You're more than welcome to join me, but you're on your own until we meet mid-afternoon for office hours, you know, a processing time in a park or a museum, and we just have some togetherness to process what we've learned throughout the day. And then I disappear on them. I mean, we're talking about if you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, if you can get around Boone, you can get around London. If you can use an ATM machine here, you can use it there. It's all in English, for Pete's sake. You're adults in that sense.
Right.
Now, if you have a concern, you can come to me. I don't expect you to know as much about it as I do. Same thing in my classrooms. There's a reason why we're up front and everyone else is sitting out there. And, you know, office hours, we're available. Yes, we have to have them, but we don't mind if you stop by and talk to us. We look forward to that. And talking to you isn't solving your problems, but sometimes just being able to talk to someone is very helpful. You get another perspective, yeah.
Right, and I think part of the issue is, you know, it's the time of life that I am in is a time that things are different, things are going to change, they're not going to be the same, and it's going to be hard, and I don't expect it to be easy. I just need help processing sometimes. And outside of just my friends who are going through the exact same thing at the exact same time, so none of us really have any kind of feedback. Yeah, we're all just kind of like, okay, good luck.
But Dave, I think that's where you're saying that's the reality check, that we provide that. You come to us and we say, okay, now look, how bad can this be?
Right, which has been so helpful, especially doing this show and being a part of having to organize and be like a little higher up on things that I'm not used to being, you know what I mean? It's helpful to have you guys there to say, hey, you can mess up, you can have these things happen, but it doesn't mean that that's the end all be all. And so I could take a deep breath and be like, wait a minute, this is okay.
Yes, you got a bad grade on a test. Okay, so where did you mess up? Why did you mess up? We can help you process that. That's all part of learning, and those lessons translate into your personal life.
Right.
Just as much as your intellectual one.
And there's something to be said about the people who, the parents, the teachers, those who supervise those with depression or whatever, that a lot of times, and I'm thinking particularly of people who are not familiar with depression, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to, you know, sometimes they say this has never happened in our family before. So how do you help someone who has these kind of issues? It's not pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
No, it's not.
And a lot of times, you know, like you said, everybody messes up. Everybody, in fact, I've been thinking about something from my ethics class, and that's the essence of forgiveness. And I don't mean so much from a religious standpoint. How do you get back into society? You know, even people who screwed up royally, and I'm thinking of sexual harassment and some of these other issues, I'm really thinking, what can be done to, in fact, some people would say they can never return to society, and I don't think that's necessarily true. It'll be a different relationship.
Right.
So when you mess up, which can cause depression, what can you do to move back into, maybe not where you were before, but to be a whole person? Just a thought.
Good question.
That is a very good one, and I've kind of been thinking about that as well, and those are questions that come up when I'm in the counseling center, and I personally go because I've been in counseling since I was 17. I put myself in there due to family things that were going on.
Good for you.
Yes,
thank
good
you.
for you.
Life comes to a point sometimes when you really don't have a choice but to ask somebody else what to do, because
Some
you
people
have no
never
more.
learn that.
Yes, and so I'm very fortunate for that, especially because I'm the lone advocate in my family for it now. But my sister and I are getting into it. But coming onto campus, obviously counseling is not cheap. And so being in college, it's nice to be on a campus that is a very big advocate for it, especially after 2015 when there was 9 deaths in 1 year, and the the university had a pretty big wake-up call during that time, especially because 3 of them were suicides and 1 of them was an overdose of drugs. And so the way that the counseling center has grown and run in that time has been so helpful, and the people that they bring in. But I talk to my counselor all the time about, like, you know how people tell you just to kind of work through it and it'll reveal itself, or like, just ask yourself how to fix it in this way, like, why am I thinking this way? Or okay, sometimes, like, he'll even bring it up. He'll be like, okay, well, now that means that you start working on that. So you're aware if something is wrong. How do you work on that? And then I end up being like, I don't know how to work on it. Like, I'm so confused. Where do you even begin? I'm already overwhelmed. And that's when they come in and are like, okay, here's what we have for you. And they offer group therapy, which is what I'm also about to get into as well, because I struggle personally with the relationship aspect of life, not just romantically, but friendships and all of that. I struggle with anxiety and being closed off a lot with them, and isolating myself, which isn't good either. And I have very irrational thoughts, but they have groups for that I didn't even know about, teaching you coping mechanisms on how to get through it and how to rationalize your thoughts and emotions so you don't get overwhelmed with them, and all of these things that I'm struggling with. And one of my best friends is struggling with her sexual orientation right now. She doesn't know what which way she leans, or if she's in the middle, and like she's but this is like
fluid,
catastrophic for her. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's this big deal for her, and it is a big deal, and it's, I think, something that everybody goes through at some point. But they have groups for that as well at the counseling center. You know, like, it's so they have so many things that they offer that people don't even know about on campus, and it's, I mean, they have things for food and body image and mindfulness and how to cope with things that happen, and understanding yourself. Like, they get very into detailed things, couples and families, and preventing things and learning how to handle it with other people. So though people may not struggle with it themselves, their friends may be struggling with it, and so they teach you, hey, this is how you deal with it if somebody does. So they have so many different resources that at the counseling center that we might not even know about, and all you have to do is go to the website and look at it.
Okay.
Is that crazy?
Sounds good.
Insane.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that you know, if I'm going to leave anyone with some sort of advice, it would be on behalf of faculty here at Appalachian State. We're here for you. That's the message we have. Don't be afraid to reach out to your professors. We may not be able to answer all of your questions, but we certainly can help you find information, find the resources that you need.
Thank you so much, HP.
You're
and thank you, Dr. Spiceland. That's our time for today. I'm Sydni Loudermilk. We hope you join us next time on The Academics.